Perfect. So my guest today, hi everyone. I'm going to try that again. Hi everyone. My guest today is Michele Molitor, who is the executive confidence coach. She's a rapid rewire expert and the CEO of Nectar Consulting. Michele, how are you today?
I'm doing great, Anthony. Thank you so much for having me on your show.
Thank you. And thank you for bearing with me as I read your author bio. Obviously, I'm having tongue twister problems at this part of the day and this part of the month, but I'm stoked to have you. I'm excited for our conversation. In the past couple days and weeks, I've just been in the trenches with people, and I'm just really excited to be able to bring what I think our conversation to them because I think I need it. So with that, why don't you tell a little bit about people, a little bit about you, your business, and what you do for people?
Sure. So I have been an executive coach now for coming up on 19 years this October. And I discovered coaching after getting kicked off the dot-com bus back in 2000. I got bullied out of my job in high tech, and it was really quite devastating for me, and it destroyed my confidence. And so I discovered coaching to help me figure out what to do next. And in the process of that, really found my true life calling and passion. So I went on to get trained and certified and started my own business, Nectar Consulting, in 2001. And since then, I've been really on a quest to help um, reclaim my own confidence and figure out what gets us stuck, how our brains work, how we operate in with each other inside of organizations, so that people don't have to go through some of the nasty things that I went through, right? And it happens, there's a lot of bullying that happens in corporate America. And along my path, I've always been learning and growing. I'm a bit of a learning junkie, Anthony. Can I have another workshop, please? Right. I discovered the work of Marissa Peer, a world-renowned therapist, several years ago now. And she's developed an amazing modality called rapid transformational therapy. And it's a unique combination that brings together neurolinguistic programming, cognitive behavioral therapy, and hypnosis all rolled up into one. And so I did some work with her, and it was so powerfully transformative for me in a matter of weeks. Things that I had been trying to get at and unearth for 20 plus years were gone in weeks. So I went on to get trained and certified with her. I've worked with her organization. I've been a graduate assistant trainer, lots of stuff with her, and have brought together RTT with my coaching and what I call my 30-day rapid rewiring program. And essentially what I'm doing with my clients in a very short period of time, instead of coaching for 6, 12 months or more, or therapy for years, which some people go through, I'm able to help folks get at the very root causes that are blocking their confidence, that are blocking their self-esteem, that are keeping them from being all of who they can be as a professional, as a leader, out in the world and sharing their gifts. So it's quite amazing to witness the transformations that happens in folks, and then how that transforms their lives personally and professionally, and how they show up as stronger leaders, stronger communicators, and better human beings.
Yeah, that's awesome. I get that. And I definitely see like the impact of what the transformation can do, because what I find, and I'm sure you find the same thing, and it didn't occur to me even when you say the rewire, but you have a set way, a learned way of doing things, and you bring that learned way of doing things into an organization, and it's like outside
Yes.
of your field of view. You don't even know what you're doing because it's primarily subconscious. And that what I hear is those transformations, being the rewiring in the short amount of time, helps people elevate to that level. So maybe I would ask first is, when you see, like, I want to get your experience versus the how of what you do, as in,
Mhm.
like, what are the things that you see uh, get in the way of leaders being successful? So outside of the like outcomes of what you do, what are some of the things that you see leaders struggle with, and that you think like limits or puts a lid on their performance and ability to be effective in organizations?
Yeah, absolutely. And I see this a lot, Anthony. And it can be very insidious, and can be old ways of being that is buried in their subconscious from things that have happened to them, somewhere along their life path, sometimes all the way back to their childhood. But um, fear of not being good enough is a very popular theme song, right? Not getting it right, not having all the answers, imposter syndrome, feeling like I'm a fraud, um, some kind, different forms of shame that were handed to them from adult figures, parents, siblings, or even colleagues and coworkers, from a bullying aspect, right? Somewhere along their path. So it comes in a lot of forms, and what that does is it has people shrink. Like they have to put up these walls to protect themselves for fear of getting that in their gut by someone. And it might be something that happened a week ago, it might be something that had happened 30 years ago, but it's all right there in your subconscious.
So I get that stuff, and I, do a lot of work on myself and work on the things of my own. I'm not good enough. Do you think that most of the time these senior leaders have the awareness that that's what it is? Or is it just like a discomfort of conflict, or I don't feel like I'm heard? Like, I get like the root of it, because the root is the thing that you're really addressing. But I wonder if everybody, the average Joe or Jane or however you want to call it, actually really gets like how that thing is more the manifestation of it, not necessarily the root cause.
I would agree with you. Most people aren't aware that they're walking around with an I'm not enough attitude, right? I didn't know that I was walking around with an I'm not enough attitude, and I had been doing personal development for years. So, but it's the discomfort of being, as you said, being in conflict with someone. It's the avoidance, the procrastination of those difficult, uncomfortable situations, and we're not aware of why it's so uncomfortable, but we avoid it like the plague, right? And so, those behaviors has leaders in particular not necessarily speak up, not raise their hand, not assert their opinions if they're in a room with other stronger personality types, right? So there's always going to be someone who's got a stronger personality and someone who's got not a stronger personality in corporate, positions, and in teams especially, right? And so understanding that about yourself as a leader, what your strengths are and what your weaknesses are. Where do you tend to draw back or hide out? Those are the places for folks to start to look and see, okay, how can I shift that? And then what is underneath that that's keeping me from actually speaking up?
So the invitation I hear is in fact, the self-awareness of recognizing if there is a discomfort or there is a thing that you're shying away from, like try to take the time to assess that. And then if, it's a barrier, then, address it. What I'm interested in, and I have sort of two parallel questions as I tend to ask. One is, how does that manifest in groups? So if you have a dominant and a non-dominant person, how does it manifest and what is the impact? So that's one. And then the other thing that you had mentioned, and if you feel comfortable sharing it, is, you had your experience in corporate America. You had your experience being bullied. And obviously it's led you to the path that you're on right now. But what were some of the things that like you experienced personally, saying, hey, I don't even know what's going on, but here's how I feel, and here's how it like maybe limited me in what I'm doing, as a means of sort of, versus talking about it, saying, hey, this is what I really experienced. So one is the group, and
Yeah,
then one is the self.
absolutely. So let me start with the self first because that illuminates the group dynamic. So for me, I was moved to the Bay Area to be a, director of experience design for this hot.com startup. It was about to IPO and had this amazing creative team around me. Hired some folks who made it clear pretty soon that they didn't like working for a woman, and belittled me. They sabotaged me. They did a lot of things, and I'm not saying this from a victim mentality. It is what it is, right? I had one colleague who literally got up in my face, was like, "I can't work for someone who's not smarter than me." I was like, "Wow!" And now I would have been like, "Well, then go ahead and leave," right? But I didn't have that chutzpah that I have now. I didn't have the words, and I was so shocked and taken aback. I literally was a deer in the headlights, and it what it created for me was a spiral of, am I doing it right? Am I getting it right? Am I good enough? Oh my gosh, I'm a fraud. I'm going to get found out. And it just created this massive amount of anxiety within me that took its toll on me mentally and emotionally and physically. I started eating more and buying shoes because that's what women do when they get stressed. They buy shoes or whatever. But ultimately, they were successful in getting me out of my position, and I got laid off and was just like, what just happened? And I had no words. I didn't know how to process it. And it was really, really challenging. And it was really interesting, Anthony, because the day that happened, the day that I actually got laid off, um, I called my mom to tell her that I'd had a really bad day. And my mom, who's very stoic, actually was like, something was wrong, and I knew it. And I was like, what's going on? And I found out a very dear friend was dying, and had hidden his illness from everyone he loved. And it really just rocked me to the core. Like, wow, okay, I lost my job today, but my friend's dying. So it kind of snapped me out of my pity party and was like, okay, what can I do to get on with, living my life, not from a place of fear, but from a place of courage. So that was a very pivotal point in my life, that day, both, on many different ways. But ultimately what that has led me to, and what I see in teams, is the person with the biggest energy wins, right? If you've got a group of people, the one who is filling the room with their presence, their energy, good, bad, or ugly, is going to dominate the conversation. And they might not even do it with their words. It might be through their energetic impact that they're having, right? Or it might be because they're just talking over everybody else and not giving other people the opportunity. So from a leadership perspective, when you're managing teams, it's important to notice who are those culprits, who are the ones that are always sitting back and not talking, and who are those that are always taking over the conversation, right? So that you can create more balance and make sure that you're, calling on people if need be to have their voices raised up with the rest of the group.
Yeah, I get that. And I'm trying to take all of that because I really got hit by like the emotional component of your story is, you sort of you got surprised as like, so the first part or the work part is that actually the surprise of being like, whoa, like, how did I end up here? Like, it sounds like technically you were very qualified, and it was like, oh, I don't even know how that happened to me. So you're a little bit railroaded, and it was as a result of not being equipped to stand in the fight. And I mean, the Bay Area, the competitive nature of it, some places are more competitive than others, but the interdynamics, I think, are the same. There are dynamics between teams no matter what. Some people like you, some people don't like you. You have conflicts, sometimes you don't, and you have to sort of figure out how to deal with them. It's interesting, your experience. Mine is sort of the flip side. I have a not good enough that runs in the background, but in the front is me being like loud and energetic. And so it's interesting how we both we deal with the same thing, but react to it in an opposite way. And then in terms of those, like, I don't know how to communicate this, is like the actually communicating what you want. What was the thing that you realized? Because I find that for things to happen, you have to sort of be a demand for something. And I find if you don't have that strength in there, then it makes it really hard to demand stuff of others, which means that you do end up playing the victim because this thing didn't happen because of XYZ reason, where you could have taken a different approach to it. So do you find that in your work? Do you find that through, I saw you work with like a lot of education clients. Do you find that that happens in the within educators, or do you see that more or less pervasive within any sort of
Oh,
subfield?
it's pervasive across. It doesn't matter the industry. I found um, that not being able to speak up and ask for what you need boils down to oftentimes that feeling of self-confidence or lack thereof, right? Lack of self-confidence, lack of self-esteem, lack of self-worth. Who am I? Why should they listen to me? And I've worked with people at many levels, all the way up to the C-suite, that have the same conversation,
Mm,
right? CEOs of multi-million dollar organizations who are, well, why should they listen to me? Well, because you've earned your stripes. Look where you are, right? But they're
yeah.
like, huh? Like it's almost, it's very unconscious to a lot of people. And and so for folks who are listening, the key is to start to notice what's the internal dialogue you're having with yourself. Are you beating yourself up on a regular basis, or are you lifting yourself up on a regular basis? Right? I always like to use the analogy of an iceberg, right? There's that little bit that's above the surface, and then there's a lot of bit that's below the surface. And if you notice that you're spending more of your time in negative thinking below the waterline, from self-doubt to fear to self-loathing to hatred, all the way down to the very bottom, more than you're spending above the waterline of, peace, happiness, joy, delight, all the way up, then that's an issue. That's a place for you to notice and to work on. Okay, how do I start to shift my internal dialogue? Because as you do that, lots of things happen. I kind of geek out on the science of all this work, Anthony. So I look at the neuroscience and the energetics of it, and emotions vibrate at different energetic frequencies. We're all energy, right? When you boil us down. So when you're thinking negative thoughts, you're vibrating at a lower frequency. And then the law of attraction, like attracts like, kicks in, physics kicks in, and you energetically will attract to you more of those negative components, those negative perspectives, because you're looking at the world through these blinders. And that's what you're looking for, is what you will find, right? But if you take the blinders off and go, oh, there's this whole other world out here of possibilities, and you start to raise your vibration, your thinking, how you're feeling about yourself, then you'll also start to shift the dynamics of what is coming to you, which you're attracting to you and into your life. People, places, opportunities, circumstances will start to shift based on your perspective and what you're expecting to see, right? So think of, like, you want to go buy a new car, right? And you're like, I'm going to go get a blue Tesla, right? So now suddenly you start seeing blue Teslas all over the road. Um, because there's a part of your brain called the mirror neurons. They're your little emotional antennae, and they help you attract to you the things that you're seeking. And so you'll just start, that will start coming into your awareness. But the same is true for negative stuff, like, oh, I'm going to get fired, or something bad is going to happen. And you start creating self-fulfilling prophecies for yourself because you're looking for all the worst things to happen. So you get to choose, what do you actually want to create for yourself in any given day, and how do you want to show up as a leader that's going to have a positive impact on the people you're working with.
Yeah, I think that's, well, it's super appropriate. When we talk about strategic planning, it's similar for the organization. You got to look internally, you got to look at where you want to go. And then, like, the sort of risk analysis is looking at what is going to get in the way. And it's that visioning piece. So, why I thought Michele would be really perfect for you guys to share with today is, like, you have your organization piece, but you are part of the organization. You are part of leading it. And so you are the creator of the type of energy that flows to you as a manager. If all you see is people complaining, then all you're going to get is people complaining. If all you get is communication silos, then you're going to just get communication silos. and that you have to sort of be the demonstrator of that. And that's a function of actually recognizing, and Michele, please correct me, a function of actually recognizing how you are reacting to certain stimulus. Something happens, you're going to react. You might have a physical sensation. And then it's like, well, do you just keep going, or do you actually recognize and try to like rewire your brain around, well, how does that trigger you? What does that mean? And how are you reacting to it? And especially now in this like time of uncertainty, because fear is running everybody's life. And if you are too focused in your head, then you can't give to people, which is why that's the leadership part of this. Thoughts, Michele, on that?
Oh no, we're like tracking on the same page, Anthony. I love it. I actually, because of everything that's been happening last, well, it's the end of March now. I created a webinar just free for everyone called "Conquering Fear and Anxiety in Uncertain Times," because it is very pervasive. And when fear kicks in, our amygdala hijacks us, and literally we can't think as clearly, and that can last for 20 minutes to 24 hours when we get caught in that fear cycle. And so, and I'm happy to share the link with you. It's, as a free gift for all your peeps. But it's a webinar, and it's an ebook, and it's what I call my transformation recording. It's a 30-minute guided recording that is very, very relaxing, but it helps literally rewire your thinking. If you listen to it for 21 to 30 days as you drift off to sleep at night, it will start to create new neural pathways in your brain of that help you be peaceful and calm and happy. And when those fear triggers do come in, you're not quite so triggered, because you're like, oh, okay, I can handle this. I'm capable of dealing with these things that come up. But fear is a very powerful, powerful emotion. And when those fear buttons get pressed, we often go automatically into that subconscious programming of, right? And that has us want to run or freeze or fight, whatever, the circumstances. So learning how to be more aware of those so that you can shift how you respond versus how you react.
Yeah.
Right.
So, and just as we sort of slowly wrap up here, there's probably listeners who are, I'm fine, but this person over here, man, they're a mess. Like they need what you're talking. I'm good. They need, my staff needs this.
Yeah.
What do you say to those people who really see this as a benefit for their team, maybe not themselves personally? Full disclosure, regardless of Michele's business, like I think everybody is this is appropriate to every single human being on the planet. Okay,
Yes, it is.
That's my bias, and so I'm not gonna butt Michele's tires, but I really do think it is. And for those people that are saying, hey, I don't need this, but my team does, what are some things that they can practically put in place? Obviously, we have the webinar, but what are some things people can practically put in place to be able to develop their team's ability to not be reactive to fear and to think at the above the line, above the water? Yeah, what are some things they can put in place for their teams over the next day, week, month?
Oh, it's simple but not easy, and that's just communicating, talking with your team members and finding out, like, and I can hear it now, well, that's touchy-feely woo-woo. I'm like, no, it's about having a conversation with someone like, hey, Anthony, I noticed you had kind of an interesting reaction today in that meeting. Is everything okay? Right? And just giving someone that undivided attention, that space to speak their truth, right? Because if someone's feeling attacked or fearful, most likely they're not going to speak their truth in a group of people, right? But you, as a supervisor, as a manager, as a leader, when you can pull that person aside and go, is everything okay? Right? That shows that you care, that you're concerned, and you want to help them move beyond that stuck spot, right? And even in a team dynamic, if you're going through a challenging issue, having that team conversation as well. So here we are folks, we're dealing with COVID. We're not able to meet in person. How are you all feeling about the sudden shift in dynamics and how we're working together? What do you need? What are you missing? And just really listening. Listening is such a powerful tool. And when I say listen, I mean really give them your full attention. Put your cell phone down. Don't look at your, your magic phone on your arm that tells you everything that you need to know, but just really look them in the eye and be present with others, because that in and of itself is such a gift, even over Zoom like this, right? People can feel your intentions, whether they speak to it or not, right? It's again back to those mirror neurons. They can feel what you're sending out energetically. And if it's, I don't really have time for this, but I'm going to go through the motions, they'll feel that it's ingenuine and they'll close, right? So it's all about helping people open. And the more you get your team to lean in from that open-minded place of how can we help each other and lift each other up, the better off we're all going to be, the more productive we will be. My favorite quotes is a rising tide lifts all boats, right? From John F. Kennedy. So just being more tuned in, right? Which as a leader means you got to work on your emotional intelligence skills, right? You got to work on yourself and get the junk out of your own trunk, so then you can spot the junk in somebody else's trunk that they need to get rid of.
Yeah. Well, what really struck home for me there was that, like there's the communicating piece, and everyone's like, oh, the communicating, it's like a task. I had a session the other day and someone's like, the task of communicating, it's the action. But you can't communicate like before that, and then you covered it after, which is actually like the listening. But it's not just like listening, like hearing. It's like listening, seeing. Like if you say something and I cross my arms, or if I like don't pay attention, or if I won't look you in the eyes, it's in my expertise and my experience more than anything. Who cares about my expertise? Is it's the stuff that people aren't saying is the stuff that is really telling, because they won't say it in that big group. So as a leader, and Michele, this is what I hear you saying, is as a leader, you need to be listening to your people so that you can communicate. It's not talking, because if you're just talking at them, you're not communicating. You really got to listen, and listen to the stuff they're not saying, so you can create that safety, that space, that openness, and then that'll bring the rewiring and the transformation from a team level. Do you get that?
Yes, absolutely. Because, 55% of all communications is all nonverbal, right? So more than half of communication is all nonverbal. So noticing what's the little micro movements that people are making. They're smiling, or they're rolling their eyes, or they're crossing, or they're sitting back, or they're like, right? So noticing all of those things is super important, because that gives you clues as a leader as to the fear triggers that are present. And from there, then you can, together or individually, you can help those folks make big or small shifts that they need to accelerate in their position, because they're feeling seen, heard, and respected. And that's really fundamental here to all human beings, Anthony. If as a leader, if you can have your team feel like they feel seen and heard and respected by you as the leader, that makes a massive difference. Difference, and then creates intrinsic motivation from the inside out.
I love that. Well, that's the task, folks, ladies and gentlemen. Look for fear, but don't look for fear. Be aware of where fear is, because if you look for fear, you're going to find it. But really look at creating that space for your team so that they feel seen and heard and understood, and then really support them in getting to that place. And my brain went from fear to freedom, but from your people's perspective, is like help them feel free in your organization by giving them. You can use that, by the way, Michele, if you want.
All right, just writing that down, from fear to freedom.
But to really create that space for them to be a contribution. And like the only thing that's getting in the way is the fear of being, the only thing of getting in the way of their contribution is the fear of being judged, which is all that stuff that lies beneath the surface that Michele will be able to speak to you way more than I could. So Michele, where can people get a hold of you? Where can people connect with you? Where can people watch and register for your webinar, get your content?
Sure. So you can always visit me at nectarconsulting.com, Nectar consulting.com. You can find me on LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and I'll share the link to my Conquering Fear and Anxiety Toolkit with you, Anthony, so folks can grab that for free. Just really want to be of service to folks through this really difficult time, and give that as a gift to everyone. So yeah, and if folks want to, have a chat with me, you can go to my website and schedule a complimentary discoveries call, and we'll have a chat, see how I may be of service to you, and get you all rewired up with some new confidence and better feelings of happiness and joy and success and all that good stuff. So
Sounds pretty good to me. That's awesome. Michele, thank you so much for joining us today. It's been a pleasure.
oh, thank you, Anthony. It's been my joy to be here with you all. Thank you.
Awesome. Well, thank you again for listening today. So my guest today is Michele Molitor, who is the executive confidence coach, rapid rewire expert, CEO at Nectar Consulting. And if you have somebody in your life or in your team who might be dealing with issues of fear, issues of lack of confidence, and who really wants to be able to be a big contribution, be sure to send them this podcast, send them some of Michele's content. It'll make a big difference for, and I think Michele and I share this, it's not just your work. It's your life, and your life is so much bigger than your work, but it's hard to ignore when it's 8 hours of your day every day. So thank you for joining us. My name is Anthony Taylor. This has been the Strategy and Leadership Podcast. I hope you enjoyed today's episode, and until next time.